The original Modern Warfare 3 was an interesting game to say the least. Not only was the game an end of an era, as it was the first Infinity Ward title without Jason West and Vince Zampella, and also the last involving Robert Bowling.
I'm a stealth clown.
It was also the last of the original Modern Warfare series as well, essentially wrapping up what's honestly one of the best first-person shooter trilogies ever, with games that I personally feel hold up to this day. So with that out of the way, let's get into the OG Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 had a bit of a rocky development. It's worth mentioning that when Jason West and Vince Zampella left Infinity Ward, a whole lot of other employees joined them on their exodus. This would lead to Sledgehammer Games and Raven Software both being tasked with assisting in the game's development for its PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Windows release on November 8th, 2011. The game would also receive a port to the Wii, which released in North America on the same day as the other versions. However, it would release on the 11th in the EU and in AU on the 23rd of the same month. There would also be a version that would drop for OS X on May 20th, 2014. The game would be received reasonably well on both PlayStation 3 and 360, with the reception on the PC and the Wii version dropping off a bit. And despite the game receiving some criticism towards it feeling like it didn't really evolve that much from its predecessors, the game would go on to have the biggest entertainment launch at the time, with $400 million in sales in a single day, with the game itself also receiving multiple awards that included accolades like Best Shooter and Action Game of the Year. It's worth mentioning that something Modern Warfare 3 would receive praise towards was the online portion of the game, which actually changed a few things. In addition to the traditional kill streaks, you also had a new support tier streak as well as the specialist bonuses. As for what support was, you essentially got points towards streaks that didn't go away even when you died. It was all mostly stuff that you could use to support your team, like UAVs, counter UAVs, SAM turrets, and stuff like ballistic vests. And as for the specialists, this would essentially allow you to get more perks as you obtain more kills. It kind of just turned you into a multiplayer beast by the end of it. But anyways, that's all I really wanted to cover with the multiplayer. Like other games in the Call of Duty series, Modern Warfare 3 had also dropped with a couple different editions as well. In addition to the standard, there was also the hardened edition of the game, which included a 1-year membership of Call of Duty Elite. More on that later. As well as founder status, a steelbook case, a collectible field journal, and an animated theme for the PS3 or a Juggernaut avatar for Xbox Live. There would also be an Intel pack for Modern Warfare 3 available at the UK retailer Game. This thing came with a voucher for 4 hours of double XP, an exclusive avatar for the 360 or an exclusive theme for the PS3, art cards, and a strategy guide for the mission Black Tuesday. As with many of the Call of Duty games that dropped around this time period, there's also a Nintendo DS version called Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 Defiance. Like many of the other DS versions, these basically served as companion narratives set in the same universe as the other entries. Outside of that, there was also a number of promotions for the game. This included a Modern Warfare 3 Turtle Beach gaming headset, a pair of sunglasses by the manufacturer Gunnar, a Municio billet earphone featuring the Modern Warfare 3 logo, a Logitech mouse and keyboard, and a limited edition Xbox 360, as well as wireless controllers and a headset. In addition to that, Modern Warfare 3 also had a special edition Jeep too. Not a lot to say, but this thing was designed with a Modern Warfare 3 theme in mind. There was also a V energy drink promotion in Australia that gave codes for downloads and previews, and there was also the Mountain Dew Game Fuel promotion for Modern Warfare 3. This thing featured a new tropical flavor exclusive for Modern Warfare 3, as well as the classic cherry. And in addition to that, there was also a Doritos promotion as well. It's worth mentioning that both Mountain Dew Game Fuel and Doritos offered codes to give double XP for the multiplayer. Swinging back around, Modern Warfare 3 also introduced Call of Duty Elite. This was essentially an online service with premium features that were exclusive to subscribers, with things like unique weapon camos and profile skins, as well as special player cards and emblems. Elite members would also receive DLC packs that would eventually be sold separate as well. This was for things like multiplayer maps and Spec Op missions. Speaking of Spec Op missions, and our last thing to cover before moving on, these were essentially solo or co-op missions that you could do. And then there was Survival. This is essentially a wave-based sort of thing like zombies, except you're fighting waves of soldiers and stuff. You can also do stuff like buy upgrades and whatnot to help your chances of lasting longer. It's pretty fun, and I actually like this mode a lot, to the point where I had to stop myself so I could actually go on and finish this video. But anyways, with all that out of the way, let's get into the recap of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. If you don't want to hear any of this part, feel free to skip ahead to the provided timestamp. Modern Warfare 3 begins with a scene showing a little background on the previous events where we left off in the previous game, before we switch to Price and Nikolai rushing Soap through a building, yelling for a doctor, as we see visions from the prior game before we get the Modern Warfare 3 title. This is followed by a scene where we learn about Russians jamming rigs, neutralizing US air support in New York, with Delta Team callsign Metal being sent in close to get rid of the primary emission tower. This begins Black Tuesday, where we're playing as a dude referred to as Frost, who's inside of a flipped vehicle with team lead Sandman.
Get switched on! We gotta move now!
So from the introduction, we fight our way to the stock exchange, heading into a building when a Russian helicopter comes out when we go out to flank the Russians on Wall Street. We continue on, eventually to the stock exchange, and then to the roof where we plant thermite charges on the jammer to take it out.
Burn it, Frost! It's coming down!
After this is done, we use a Predator drone to take out enemies before we jump to a Black Hawk, and receiving a new mission directive, assaulting a command vessel in the New York harbor. But first, we gotta take out some enemy choppers, with the last one causing ours to lose stability as we almost crash. However, the pilot regains control and then the level ends as we follow up with a briefing, learning guidance systems are back online with targets blown up as forces push the front line back to the river. This is where we learn Delta's being sent in to strike a Russian command vessel before they can launch a counterattack and turn their own weapons against them. This begins Hunter Killer as we're underwater in a collapsed tunnel in the New York harbor, driving along with our team underwater to go and plant a mine on a sub. After a boom, the sub surfaces with our new task of reaching the missile control room as we enter the sub, sweeping and clearing. Eventually, we get this breach and clear sequence with Sandman getting a missile key, and then we go and fire some missiles onto the Russian fleet, going on to escape the harbor after, when we learn about the missile strike neutralizing all of the primary targets as the mission ends. This is followed by a scene where we learn from Overlord that we're no longer on the defensive, now going on the counterattack, as we switch to a narrating Price, talking about Russians who would reject Makarov's lunacy, as we see some drama with Soap not doing too hot, with Makarov coming in to tie up loose ends. We learn here about Nikolai's best man, an ex-Spetsnaz named Yuri, a dude who apparently hates Makarov more than Price, as we switch to playing to him in the level Persona non grata, seeing Soap in bad shape as Price yells about needing to get him to a chopper with a helicopter crashing into the room, with the objective of defending Soap and then helping him with a little shot as we go on following Price, going on to a weapons cache. Eventually, we get into a room where we take control of an unmanned ground vehicle, taking control of it as we clear a path to a chopper. After this, we go back to Yuri as we rush to the chopper. However, so Yuri ends up having to go for a little ride down a river, but luckily survives, which ends the level, with Price giving a small monologue about truth being a matter of perspective as we switch to playing as an FSO named Andrei Harkov in the mission Turbulence, where we go on escorting the president and moving to a guard position. So we see the president talking about peace here when the room's breached, with our new objective of leading him to safety. Along the way, however, we end up needing to go secure the president's daughter as well, after which, receiving an objective of leading the president to the safe room. However, this objective fails. So we end up surviving this as we follow our commander to search for the president with enemies inbound. We do find the president, however, as we go to head inside of a helicopter,
You know who I am?
Yes.
Then you know what I want.
You're insane.
Russia will take all of Europe, even if it must stand upon a pile of ashes. I want the launch codes, Mr. President.
Never get them.
So Makarov demands launch codes from the Russian president as we hear that the president's daughter was secured. Makarov then executes Andrei, and then the level ends. In the next transition scene, we hear Soap saying that Makarov played his next hand as we see a broadcast about the Russian president not making it to Hamburg. We learn from here that our next destination is Africa, as Makarov had been using a local paramilitary group to move shipments into Sierra Leone. In the next mission, back on the grid, we see Soap, Price, and Yuri in the water outside of a village where we're on the lookout for a factory with Makarov's cargo as we follow Captain Price into a village to a point where we're overlooking a factory and need to provide overwatch for Price and Soap. After doing so, and allowing Price and Soap to advance up the road, we discover that the place is a dead end where we're informed that they must have moved everything to the military's headquarters as Soap and Price end up being compromised, leading Yuri to need to regroup with them and push through the village where we eventually commandeer a technical turret, getting knocked out from an explosion eventually where we gotta follow Price as mortar strikes rain down. We eventually take the mortar crews out and man them, blowing stuff up. Once this is done, we go onto a church where the cargo's supposed to be, and if it's not there, then we're informed that it's on its way to Europe as we go on with our objective of securing the cargo.
The shipment's gone. We missed our window.
What about Makarov?
Must have done a runner. Just get us out of here.
Empty.
So after this, we see that the cargo crate is empty and we switch on to playing as the Special Air Service, where we're informed about the French intercepting a message concerning a suspicious shipment headed for Britain, with the SAS being tasked with investigating Tier 1 threats. This is where we switch to the level Mind the Gap, as we play as Sergeant Marcus Burns with the mission beginning, where we see an overview of some trucks taken off, with one still at the docks, meaning we're going to go and secure it by sweeping the area and then going on to open the truck to see what's inside. Surprise, however, it's empty, as we're then attacked, which leads us into chasing hostiles, eventually getting into the back of a truck where we go chasing after a subway car, which inevitably leads to a little accident. So after this, we continue into Westminster Station, clearing it out and then heading topside to set up a blockade where we stop a truck.
There's the truck! Weapons free! Going for the bloody
Clear! Base plate, the lorry's down. We're secure. What's the status on the others? Base plate, come in. Base plate, where are the trucks?
So in this scene, we see a chemical attack with the following transition screen showing multiple locations that were hit, with a base in Ramstein being attacked by the Russian army. We learn here that the attacks were intended to pave the way for an invasion, with Delta being rerouted to Hamburg to rescue the US Vice President. This leads to the mission goalpost, where we're back to playing as Frost as we head in by chopper, eventually touching down and clearing the way for some tanks, being tasked with manning the minigun on one, where we roll out and take out targets up until this point where we're in a parking garage and, well...
Frost! 2-2! You alright? 2-2, come in!
So we survive this and then go on to locate goalpost, coming across a shot up convoy with no sign of the target, leading us to search the area where we gotta do a little breaching. So after we rescue the dude, we go to extract, ending the level. This has us switching to Yuri with a transition scene where we see Price contact Macmillan, who says that Makarov was behind the chemical attacks. Mac gives Price a location here of a delivery freighter traced back to Somalia, tied to a guy named Warabi. As we begin the mission, return to sender, driving in and immediately having a blast away at dudes, and using a remote turret to thin the enemies, eventually going on to capture Warabi.
Gas masks on.
Look familiar.
No, please!
Where's Makarov? Tell me and it's yours.
Our contact was a man named Volk. We never met Makarov.
Where's this Volk?
Paris! He oversaw the delivery in Paris!
Right then. This is for the boys at Hereford.
Nikolai, we're all be broke. We have what we need. Ready for exfil.
So Price executes the dude after finding out about someone named Volk who was overseeing a delivery in Paris, and then we fight our way to an exfil. However, Nikolai's chopper comes and crashes down, which leads us needing to get to him. We eventually come across him, picking him up, and then head into a vehicle, driving off as we escape the enemy and ending the level. This leads to a transition scene with Price contacting Sandman, telling him about Makarov's bomb maker Volk, who's in Paris. We also learn that the guy is using something called Frigata Industries as a front to distribute WMDs, and that Price is heading to their European HQ. This is where we're told from Overlord that the GIGN was able to locate Volk. This begins the mission Bag and Drag, where we're playing as Frost, seeing that Paris had been hit with a chemical attack as we go on to rendezvous with the GIGN squad. Once we find them, we learn that the Russians had launched a chemical attack from a staging ground in the catacombs, and that Volk is believed to be there as well. We're then led to his location via the catacombs entrance as we follow the GIGN leader through the place. When we get a positive ID on Volk and end up having to chase after the dude. However, he looks like he's about to get away when we jump in a van and continue after him, with this section where we end up drilling his getaway vehicle.
Vehicle is down! Get out!
The next intermission scene, we see the president contacting Overlord about the status of Makarov. He tells the president that Delta has Volk in custody. However, their OPSEC is compromised, which means there's going to be a lot of shooting to get to the extraction point. This begins a mission Iron Lady where we rush to get to the Osprey. However, it gets shot down. The game then switches us to man the gun of an AC-130 as we take out enemies while Delta escorts Volk through the streets. Eventually, we end up needing to shoot at a courtyard building when we switch back to Frost, who's tasked with flanking an MG nest. After this, we're in the air again, blowing more stuff up to escort friendlies to the LZ. We then switch back to Frost again, where we get tasked with blowing up some tanks using a javelin, when we push on to the landing zone for extraction with all sorts of chaos happening. Once things are cleared up enough, we board a chopper, thus ending the level. This goes on to an intermission scene with Price and Sandman having a conversation about Volk spilling the beans on everything, including the Frigata, with Makarov going to meet with his top advisors at Hotel Lustig in Prague. We go on to see our boys in some sewers when we go on to rendezvous with Resistance, going on to reach Kamarov and crew when we continue on with Soap, heading through the streets avoiding enemy patrols, and eventually running into a little chaos when we gotta head through a building to get to a church where the level ends. And then we get the scene with Soap and Yuri talking about Makarov as they set up waiting to assassinate him. This begins the mission Blood Brothers as we overlook Makarov's convoy through the scope of a rifle. We end up sniping some dudes on a balcony so that Price could get into the building when we see Kamarov had been captured when some explosives go off, and Makarov tells Yuri that he should have never come there, with Soap questioning what he means, as a beeping happens with Soap pushing Yuri out of the building as he's hit with an explosion. This leads to Yuri picking Soap up as we follow Price avoiding enemy gunfire. Eventually, we end up having to take point to protect Soap when we get to a building to help out.
Not now, son. Just rest. Get a medic! Come on, stay with me, son. Price. So! No, no, no! Guys! So! You have to go now! Get off me! I'm sorry.
So Soap is killed, which leads to us escaping. However,
So trusted you. I thought I could too. So why in bloody hell does Makarov know you?
so this leads into the level Yuri, where we see that Makarov had been there when Imran Zakhaev was shot by Price, and that he was also there when the nuke that took out the Marines in Modern Warfare 1 was detonated. This is followed by the events leading up to the Modern Warfare 2 No Russian mission as well.
I know what you have done, Yuri. I know what you have told them. My friend, my ally, my betrayer. What happens here today will change the world forever. Nothing can stop this. Not even you.
Пока не докурить сигарету. Я уже постараюсь через несколько часов.
So Yuri says that he was a soldier of Russia and not someone who is willing to take innocent lives. This is where we go back to Price, who says that Yuri has bought himself some time, when this section ends with one where Price gets into contact with Mac about a location of a place where Makarov used to cache weapons at an old castle near Prague. Mac gives him the layout of the place, and then we begin the level Stronghold as we follow Price to find a way into the castle. Eventually, we hit this point where Price plants some C4, and then we go on to take out some guards before we move into this building where Price clears a room. When we go on to find a comm station, we go on to this point where we gotta time a blast with the sound of thunder as we do a little climbing with Price and eavesdropping on the enemy.
For the last time, I will not bow to the demands of terrorist thugs. I will die before I surrender the nuclear launch codes.
Makarov, I see. This is what we're dealing with, brothers. A stubborn old man hopelessly out of step with the changing world.
Sir, still no response from the security room.
Will change.
Get down there. Find out what's going on.
Alexei, has your intel been confirmed?
Yes, sir. Our men are on the way to Berlin.
Are you listening?
The daughter is there. We will have her in a matter of hours.
Keep me updated.
Time to go. They must have found the bodies. This should buy us some time.
So Price whips a grenade into the room when we make our escape, eventually hitting this section where we gotta parachute out to safety as the level ends. The following scene, we switch back to Delta where we have Sandman getting into contact with the Russian president's daughter, finding out her location. This begins the next level Scorched Earth as we head through a building with Sandman where he yells that we're overrun. This is when we cut back to a scene 20 minutes earlier as we land and go to provide overwatch. Once in position, we go and provide support for Granite Team by taking out targets, going on to mark tanks for destruction as well. Shortly after this, however, Granite Team gets blown up, which leads us having to go after them as we rappel down the building to hit the streets. As we go onto a bridge and push up a street when some chaos happens. So we're brought back to where we were when we started the mission as we go on to get to a hotel, learning that the president's daughter is being taken away for extraction as we head to the roof. Eventually, we hit a point where we need to breach. However,
Overlord, negative precious cargo. We lost her.
So we're unable to save the president's daughter in the end, which ends the level, and leads to this transmission scene with Sandman contacting Price, saying that the girl was taken to a diamond mine in Siberia. Price says here that we're only gonna have one shot to grab the president before he gives up the launch codes. This leads to the level Down the Rabbit Hole beginning, where we're playing as Yuri as we start the level on an elevator, going down with our objective of finding and rescuing President Vorshevsky. However, the elevator ends up crashing down, which leads us having to get off sweeping some enemies as we continue on, hitting this breaching point where we're able to save the president's daughter and then continue searching for the president after, eventually seeing him being dragged further into the mines. We go on, getting to this point where we end up having a breach from above to save the dude.
President is secure.
We go on to secure the dude as we're swarmed by the enemy, with Sandman telling the chopper to come and get us below ground, with Delta sacrificing themselves so that we could get away. So after this, we overhear a broadcast about President Vorshevsky's return to Moscow, with peace talks between the United States and Russia, and also that Makarov is still at large and Price still wanting him gone. This begins the level Dust to Dust, where we're playing as Price with the objective of killing Makarov, as we pretty much go through this area unleashing mayhem on enemies, armored up as juggernauts. Eventually, we hit this point where we gotta go up an elevator, having to drop a helicopter. However, it ends up crashing into the elevator, causing us to need to shed our armor. Going on, we get this timer with Makarov making us escape as we rush onwards to kill the dude. However, so Yuri gets impaled by some rebar, which leads us having to continue on without him, rushing to Makarov's helicopter and hopping on for a little ride. So Makarov and Price survive the crash. However, Makarov ends up gaining the upper hand, about to execute Price, when Yuri distracts him and gets dropped in the process. This leads to Price getting the opportunity to get the jump on Makarov, finishing him off when we see the scene go on with Price enjoying a cigar, which ends Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, my friends. Summarizing my thoughts of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, I have to say, out of the original trilogy, I personally feel like it's the weakest. However, I still think that it's a fun game despite some of the random stuff that I saw while playing it. Honestly, after going through this trilogy again, I really felt that there was something off with Modern Warfare 3 in specific. I think having Yuri is okay as a way to help explain how Makarov was pretty much there from the beginning. I don't necessarily have anything against the retconning or anything, like him being included in sections like the nuke scene and whatnot. It's whatever. The dude is like a mastermind of everything happening here anyways, so why not give us more of an excuse to dislike him? That being said, I think that maybe the other elements of the campaign feel a little weaker. Like Delta, for example, feels like kind of a downgrade compared to the Rangers of MW2 and even the Marines in Call of Duty 4. Same goes for the Special Air Service. Like, as I was writing this script, I actually kind of forgot that there was a level involving these dudes because it's so brief and really just exists as a build-up to this controversial bomb scene that I don't think has the same effect as something like No Russian. However, I'd say that it does at least convey a message of how brutally merciless people can be, with evildoers committing barbaric acts just to see the world burn. But yeah, overall, I think maybe it's the game's length that played a part in some moments feeling forgettable. I don't know why, but it felt like I ripped through the campaign here a lot quicker than 4 in Modern Warfare 2. If I had to point to any levels in particular that I really liked, Black Tuesday I thought was a cool introduction to the game, especially with all the mayhem and familiar surroundings with an under attack Manhattan. I'd also say that Scorched Earth is another one as well. Getting to play around with airstrikes for a bit is fun, and I thought the building collapse scene was a nice cinematic touch. Speaking of which, I think the game still looks pretty okay too. I was playing the game with max settings on PC, and I really thought that certain levels looked pretty nice. Something about the ones with rain in particular really stood out. Stronghold, for example, had this really cool vibe to it. Like, infiltrating under the cover of a storm definitely made going through this level a lot more interesting than the mission would have been without this added effect. Same applies to Eye of the Storm. The introduction to this level in particular is pretty strong, and the whole vibe of the city is interesting too, with Yuri and Soap doing a little stealth sniping. It's a neat little level that I'll give some credit to as well. Other than all of that, the gameplay is pretty much the same as the other games in the original Modern Warfare trilogy too. In fact, there's even a return of some familiar things like this AC-130 level, and we're basically using stuff like the Predator drone to take out targets as well. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, but someone could argue that the status quo isn't exactly something that's going to make the game stand out all that much compared to its predecessors. I think that if there's anything that I could really point out a difference in, it's the guns. I don't know what it is, but I'm not necessarily a fan of too many guns here, especially when it comes to things like sound. For comparison, here's the M4A1 in all 3 of the non-remastered games. Maybe this could be a preference thing, but I actually prefer Modern Warfare 2's M4A1 sound. And really, the sounds of a lot of other guns a lot more than some of the Modern Warfare 3 counterparts. It isn't to say that they sound terrible, but there's something that doesn't really sit right with me for the Modern Warfare 3 audio. Voice acting is still good here. There's some changes to characters like Nikolai, but Soap, Price, and Makarov are still the same. Still good too. You got a return of Craig Fairbrass in the game as well, doing the voice of Wallcroft here. But in addition to the familiar stuff, we got people like William Finkner and Idris Elba. It's all top-notch performances again, like the other games in the original trilogy. Good stuff here. I'll also add that the game's music is still good too. Again, I wouldn't say that it's better than Modern Warfare 2 or Black Ops, but there's a lot of catchy tracks. Like, I could say I'm a fan of the Delta and Inner Circle Spawn themes from the multiplayer, which I believe is bits of the Hamburg Invasion and Special Forces tracks. The Special Air Service theme is also good too, so I'd go with all those as my top 3 in the game. And I'd also give some credit to the GIGN theme as well, because that one goes hard too. So with all that out of the way, I'll take a moment to point out any flaws I saw with Modern Warfare 3. I think that the first thing that I can point to is that I mainly saw the narrative as being a step back from the previous 2 games, which I already kind of alluded to. However, I still don't mind the game. Like, if you look at the original trilogy as a collective whole, it's still a good way to end, since pretty much everything has been taken care of with the death of Makarov. But if I was to look at something else, maybe it's just some of the weird stuff that I saw. I don't know what the heck was going on, but there was a few moments where I saw floating bodies in midair after they died. I don't know if this is something that only PC players got to bask in, but damn. Not very good for immersion, that's for sure. So in closing, the original Modern Warfare trilogy as a whole is truly special. I think that even if Modern Warfare 3 is a step back from the previous 2 entries, that doesn't really take away that the game is still pretty fun to play. I mean, really, all the games are good in their own ways, so you can't really take away from that too much. I think that the most interesting thing about Modern Warfare 3 is that it could have been a drastically different game had it not been for the drama that happened between Activision and Weston Zampella. But even then, I think the ending is still a fitting one since it ties up the Makarov loose end. Do I think that it could have been better? Probably. But all things considered, and compared to a lot of the other later entries, this game is still masterclass. And honestly, at the end of the day, that's what continues to make make the original Modern Warfare series special. It's an epic trilogy with games that raise the bar of the FPS genre, and that's something that'll help these games stay relevant and continue to stand out amongst the reboots. Thank you all for watching. I've been wanting to get around to finishing up the original Modern Warfare trilogy and was really glad to finally do so. The original Modern Warfare trilogy is special to me since it's some of my favorite games. But anyways, I'd like to know what you all think. Did you all prefer the original games or do you like the reboots? Let me know in the comments and I'll take a look. Also, if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing. We'll be back with more soon enough, so stay tuned. Until next time, peace out.